JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. So the EIDL as well as the PPP, how do they interact? So getting a lot of questions on this. We know yesterday the SBA came out with a third PPP forgiveness application. Check out my videos on that. Here's the deal with the EIDL grant. So that's the amount that you don't have to pay back to the SBA, meaning, and you already know there's a catch here, so just stay with me, meaning you don't pay that back to the SBA. So if you were applying for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan online, sba.gov, there would have been no confusion what you were doing there. You answered a bunch of questions, and one of them was, do you want to be considered for and or receive the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance, which has become to know as the grant? That was the one that early in, it was $10,000 per business, then it was $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000, and then about a month and a half ago, they've run out of the advance, and so they're not able to provide those anymore. But here's the deal. Whether you got the EIDL or not, meaning the loan, if you got the advance, that $1,000, $2,000, up to $10,000, that will still reduce down your PPP loan forgiveness. So it is unfair. It seems very unfair here. So let me break it down if you're wanting to make sure I'm being crystal clear here. Even though the SBA came out with the new PPP forgiveness application yesterday, the third one, that has no change to the fact that whatever you have determined to be your PPP forgiveness amount, which hopefully it's equal to your PPP loan, but whatever your forgiveness amount is, it will be reduced by the amount that you received in that EIDL grant, the advance. And therefore, you're not paying back the advance to the SBA, but whatever your PPP forgiveness is, less the amount that your advance is, that's what you're going to pay back to the bank. So simple example, you got a PPP loan and it's $14,000 and you got a $3,000 EIDL advance grant, same thing. So let's say you have all the expenses you could need, you have plenty of covered expenses, and therefore the $14,000 that you borrowed, if you will, the $14,000 that you got in the PPP would be fully forgiven if you have all the expenses you could need. Plenty of payroll, rent, utilities, interest, right? $14,000. Your application's going to show $14,000 as your forgiveness amount, whether it's version 1, version 2, or version 3. But you'll hand that into the bank. The bank will either agree or disagree. And if the bank agrees and they go, yep, we agreed that your forgiveness amount is $14,000 equal to your loan of $14,000. And then the SBA looks at it and they go, yep, we agreed that your forgiveness amount is $14,000. However, it's the SBA that says, however, you received an EIDL advance grant of $3,000. Therefore, your net forgiveness amount is only $11,000. And therefore you will pay back $3,000 of your PPP to the bank. And if you got your PPP on or before June 5th of 2020, you'll pay that back over 2 years, 1%. If you got it June 5th or after, you'll pay it back over 5 years, 1%. Of course, you can pay it back whenever you want. The thing to note here that's a little unfair, this is the little unfair part, maybe they'll correct it later, is that whatever's not forgiven, you will owe interest on that. So a little unfair that someone received $14,000 of PPP, they used it properly, they get $14,000 forgiven. They get the grant of $3,000, they use it properly. But because they got both, they're going to have to pay back $3,000 of the PPP, and there will be interest due on the $3,000 starting with the date of when you got the disbursement. Maybe what they'll do, pure speculation, is that if there's a reduction in the amount of your PPP forgiveness, the interest doesn't start on that until after it gets determined by the SBA and you start paying it back. I don't know that that'll be the case or not. So the unfortunate thing is there are those that I've interacted with, they got PPP as a self-employed of, $1,500. And then they got an EIDL advance of $1,000. So really of their PPP that they got 1,500 of, well, they're gonna have to pay 1,000 of it back. So the application that came out yesterday, this version that if you got 50,000 or less, you get to use that application, is not automatic forgiveness. It's just simply you don't have to show your calculation on the form. You still have to do all the same work. You have to prove it to the bank. You actually have to show the bank your calculation. But on that version where you just indicate, here's my PPP amount, here's my PPP forgiveness amount, like the other two PPP applications for forgiveness, it still has a spot that you indicate that you got an EIDL advance and what that dollar amount is. And then rest assured, if you forget for whatever reason, the SBA will know, they'll match it up, they're still going to reduce it. You should include it if you're aware of it, of course. Then the last thing I'll note is that because of the third application, it is that you are automatically in the 24-week option everywhere you go. First, second, third, unless you list a different covered period. But the thing to note here is that the 24-week option is the best option. It's the only option really you should be choosing. Can't come across any scenario where you'd want the 8-week option for your covered period. But if you do want the 8-week option, you have to elect it, meaning the default is the 24 weeks. So with this third version, in essence, you're staring down, it's just the 24-week covered period, which is beautiful. All right, hey, want to give you that synopsis. Hopefully that helps because I got a ton of questions on it. And then if you, gosh, I always forget to ask earlier on, but if you haven't subscribed, please do put your notifications on. With the stimulus talks increasing, negotiations hopefully back to reality, the election coming up, and politicians wanting to put out lollipops. You want to be in tune with my channel. I got 27 years as a CPA. I have a responsibility to ensure the information that I'm putting out is not to get views per se. It's not to try and get you to watch it and give you false hope or idiotic information. I have a responsibility to give you the best information that I know. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. And then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. Boomer Sooner. It's OU Texas weekend. My son and I, this will be our 11th year to come and see OU Texas, 11 years in a row. So, all right, hey, have a great one.